never time, never blue.
In March of 1959, 3 years before Marilyn Monroe's death, the most successful film in her career opened, Billy Wilder's Some Like It Hot, co-starring Jack Lemmon and Tony Curtis. Marilyn herself didn't like the picture, though it's among her best performances, and the film remains among the most successful of screen comedies. Curtis does Cary Grant for a good part of it.
Look, if you're interested in whether I am married or not...
Oh, I'm not interested at all.
Well, I'm not.
That's very interesting.
The real Cary Grant was seen in 2 films in 1959. His Christmas entry became the highest-grossing movie in his career. The picture was director Blake Edwards' first hit, and, as I understood from both of them, Cary and Blake did not get along too well. But then, Cary was also the producer of the film, a tough situation for any director. Grant's co-star was, Tony Curtis. Operation Petticoat was a well-crafted World War II service comedy, one of those virtually extinct creatures, a family picture. But most pictures then were family pictures.
How's the women are pregnant? Look, look. Yes, sir. Any minute now, sir.
Isn't it lucky for us, sir, we have the nurses aboard?
I'm running a submarine on the maternity ward. What's that thing doing here, that goat?
The biggest movie of 1959 was MGM's Ben-Hur, which won 11 Oscars, including Best Picture, but probably what was thought to be the least distinguished movie released in America that year was a chopped-up, terribly dubbed version of a picture now considered internationally to be among the masterpieces of European film. Shown in Europe 3 years before, Lola Montez was conceived and directed by the legendary Max Ophuls, co-starring Martine Carol, Peter Ustinov, and a huge supporting cast about the life and times of the famous courtesan. Available in America for the first time now in its complete original form, but you do have to imagine the impact on the big screen. Looking back on it after 3 decades, 1959 turned out to be one of the last years in Hollywood's, even then, somewhat tarnished but nevertheless golden era. For me at the time, just leaving my teens, perhaps it's an impressionable age, but 59 produced 3 of my favorite movies, each of them very popular in their day, still popular, and considered around the world as among the finest of each of their directors' work. In April of 59, there was Howard Hawks's Rio Bravo, featuring John Wayne's most purely likable performance, and equally good work from Angie Dickinson and from Dean Martin, from Walter Brennan. Certainly this was Ricky Nelson's best picture. It's also perhaps director-producer Hawks's mellowest yet most characteristic work, made at the age of 64, another of his stories about friendship among men and women.
Unloosen that belt.
Stay back here.
You're going to turn Joe Burdett loose, or you and your deputy are going to quit worrying about this whole thing.
Just keep coming, mister.
For me?
Yes, you.
In that July of 59, there were 2 classic suspense films released, one of them entirely based on actual events in a Michigan murder case, as told by the defense attorney in a best-selling book, and shot entirely on the real locations where it all took place. Anatomy of a Murder remains probably Otto Preminger's best film, with an extraordinary set of performances from James Stewart as the attorney. He was nominated for an Oscar and won the New York Film Critics Award as Best Actor for this, and Lee Remick, Ben Gazzara, Arthur O'Connell, Eve Arden, and in his first movie role, George C. Scott. The once-in-a-lifetime score is by Duke Ellington, and somehow the picture seems even more potent and honest now than it did at the time.
Your Honor, the counsel has deliberately cut off my view of the witness.
I'm sorry, Mr. Bigler. I wouldn't want to interfere with your signals to Mr. Manning.
Well, I object to the implication I was signaling the witness. This is the shabbiest courtroom trick I've ever seen.
You haven't lived, Miss Bigler.
The other thriller from that summer of 59 was assuredly not based on fact. It was based rather on the imaginings of Alfred Hitchcock in his satirical chase picture mood. When I first met Hitch a couple of years later, I remember he said, "I was very amused when I read one New York critic referring to North by Northwest as unconsciously funny." Well, my dear, the film is sheer fantasy. North by Northwest, co-starring Eva Marie Saint and James Mason, was among Hitchcock's most popular pictures, as it was the 3rd most successful movie in Cary Grant's career and probably his most likable performance. It was, above all, Hitchcock's most purely enjoyable and mischievously comic movie, featuring that famous crop duster.